Over the last 4 sessions, we've had a glance, no more than that, at what the Bible says about God, about the kind of God he's supposed to be, about what he's done throughout human history and what he's planning to do next, about where we stand in relation to him. And now we have to face the biggest issue of all. If this God is real and the Bible tells us the truth about him, can we ever be sure? Can you really know God for yourself? Obviously, the early Christians thought you could. The word know rings through the pages of the New Testament again and again. Paul says, I know the person in whom I have believed, and I am persuaded that he is able to keep everything that I've committed to his trust until the day I see him. Peter says that God has given us everything we need for a godly life through our knowledge of him. Just before his arrest and death, Jesus prayed to his Father, and one of the things he said about his followers was this: I have made you known to them, and will continue to make you known, in order that the love you have for me may be in them, and that I myself may be in them. Can humans know God as a friend and a constant companion? It wasn't a new idea that started with the Christians. Back in the Old Testament, the Jewish prophets had foreseen what was going to happen too. Jeremiah, for example, predicted, No longer will they teach their neighbour or say to one another, Know the Lord, because they will all know me, from the least of them to the greatest, declares the Lord. For I will forgive their wickedness and will remember their sins no more. How can you know for sure? Some people think it's a matter of logical proof. If you can come up with a mathematical or scientific formula which will establish once and for all, beyond any shadow of doubt, that God is real, and just like the Bible describes, then you can believe, then and then only. There's only one problem with that. Logic isn't watertight. If you had a proof of that kind, you might be convinced by it for 5 minutes or so. Then you'd spend the rest of your life looking for the flaw in the calculations. The world is often much more surprising than we think. For a long time, Newtonian physics seemed to explain the way things happened very elegantly and economically. But then we discovered quantum physics and relativity and realised that there was a lot more to reality than Newton had ever imagined. So no formula will ever carry complete conviction. That's why some people go for a second option: miraculous happenings. If you can see something inexplicable taking place right in front of your eyes, then you have grounds to believe it, don't you? So if God does a miracle for me, I'll believe in him. If he doesn't, no deal. The trouble is, miracles don't provide lasting evidence either. There could be another explanation, couldn't there? If you lived in the jungles of Borneo, the first time you saw an aeroplane, you might think it was a miracle. A man sitting in the sky with no visible means of support. But once you understood aerodynamics and gravity, you'd soon realise nothing supernatural was involved. Just the sophisticated application of normal, boring, everyday science. And so with miracles, you'd spend the rest of your life looking for alternative explanations. You'd never quite be sure you had the right one. If God appeared before you on a flaming cloud of fire and had a chat with you, that might convince you for a short while. But an hour later you might be questioning your experience and asking if it had really happened or if you just had a vivid dream. Perhaps you had some kind of brain seizure or a hallucination, or maybe somebody slipped some drugs into your coffee. If you go through an event that's completely unlike anything you normally experience, the problem is that you have nothing to compare it to. It's so far outside the range of your normal life happenings that you can't assess it properly. Do you believe it or not? It's an open question. Now in the New Testament, Paul the missionary encountered lots of people who were either looking for logical proof or looking for experiences, and he had bad news for them. There was nothing of that kind available, but what he said was this: Jewish people are looking for signs, and the Greeks are looking for arguments and wisdom, but what we proclaim is actually Christ crucified. In other words, what you need is not rational proof or mystic happenings, but an ongoing relationship with a real person, someone you can't see, but who is really there. Someone you will come to know and depend on the longer life lasts and the more you have to do with them. Somebody who becomes so dependable that you know you can trust all he says about himself because it's slowly coming true in your own experience. It's what one writer once called the transforming friendship. It's a great idea, but does it happen? Let's discuss it now.